Coming up today, the Koreas prepare to hold a rare set of reunions for families separated since the Korean War. The South Korean family members will gather near the border today. In a bid to boost Korea's chronically low birth rate, the government unveils plans to encourage more people to get married and start a family. Plus, tens of thousands of people are evacuated as slow-moving Typhoon Koppu grinds its way across the Philippines. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Monday, October 19th here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. A rare round of reunions for families separated since the Korean War are now just one day away. The lucky South Korean family members selected for reunions with their long-lost northern relatives are getting ready for the event. For more on the next steps, Arirang reports.
South Korea's Unification Ministry said Sunday that the people who will participate in the first round will gather in Sokcho on Monday, one day ahead of the reunion event. There they will be briefed on the itinerary and be given some precautionary instructions. The next morning on Tuesday, they will board a bus heading to Mount Kumgang on the northern side of the border, where they will meet long-lost loved ones for the first time in 60 years. The first round of meetings will reunite 394 people from South Korea and 96 from the north. Over the course of 3 days, the families will meet 6 times for 2 hours each at various events. A second round of meetings for 90 people from the south and 188 from the north will follow on Saturday and continue for 3 days. This will be the 20th round of reunions after those initiated in August of 2000. Roughly 650 families from North and South Korea chosen by lottery will participate in the reunions this year. Arirang, Arirang News.
Now, President Park Geun-hye is back in Seoul following a 4-day trip to the United States. While in Washington, the South Korean leader held her 4th summit with US President Barack Obama. For a look back on what was agreed, Hwang Sang-hee reports.
The presidential office of Cheongwade said Sunday South Korea and the U.S. reaffirmed their alliance during President Park's visit to Washington. For the first time, the two allies adopted a joint statement solely on North Korea, a sign of their strong commitment against Pyongyang's nuclear weapons program.
오늘 우리 두 정상은 한반도와 동북아의 평화 안보에 최대 위협이 되고 있는 북한의 도발 위협 및 핵능력 고도화와 관련해 많은 점에서 인식을 공유했습니다.
The joint statement details Seoul and Washington's action plan against Pyongyang, which includes strong counteraction against further provocations while remaining open to dialogue. The summit was also an opportunity to brush off any speculation that South Korea's recent cozy ties with China have fractured its alliance with the U.S.
We want South Korea to have a strong relationship with China, just as we want to have a strong relationship with China.
President Obama added that the U.S. expects South Korea to speak out if China fails to abide by international norms and rules. On the economic front, the presidential office said Seoul has secured Washington's consent for Korea's possible participation in the Trans-Pacific Partnership. With the negotiations for the 12-nation trade pact, which includes the U.S. and Japan, having wrapped up recently, some have voiced criticism about Korea's isolation in the new global economic order. President Park has another key diplomatic event ahead as Korea prepares to host its first trilateral summit with Japan and China in more than 3 years, slated for early November. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
Now, as a follow-up to that report, North Korea chose to pay no mention to last Friday's summit talks between Presidents Park and Obama. In a statement released over the weekend, the North's foreign ministry instead called on the U.S. to negotiate a peace treaty. It said trust can remove the roots of war and end the nuclear competition between them. The ministry warned the alternative would be further nuclear development to counter threats from the US. This is the second time in the space of just 1 month that Pyongyang has suggested a peace treaty with Washington. A recent visit by 2 Japanese ministers to a controversial war shrine in Tokyo has cast a shadow over an upcoming trilateral summit with Korea and China that is slated for early next month. Japan's Justice and Internal Affairs ministers visited the Yasukuni war shrine on Sunday, a day after Prime Minister Shinzo Abe sent a symbolic offering to mark the country's annual autumn festival. Korea's foreign ministry condemned the actions, adding that the stable development of relations with Japan is only possible when Tokyo atones for its wartime atrocities based on a correct recognition of history. Korea and China view the shrine, which honors Japan's war dead, including 14 Class A war criminals, as an enduring symbol of Tokyo's militaristic past. Now, despite lingering historical tensions between South Korea and Japan, military cooperation between the two countries seems to be getting stronger, as witnessed by a Japanese fleet review on Sunday. The South Korean Navy sent the Daejeong destroyer with some 220 crew on board to take part in the event on Sagami Bay. This is off Kanagawa Prefecture. The Korean destroyer will also conduct joint search and rescue training on Monday with Japanese escort vessels. And in another signal of deepened bilateral defence cooperation, Seoul's Defence Minister Han Min-gu will hold talks with his Japanese counterpart Gen Nakatani on Tuesday, when he visits Seoul for the first time in nearly 5 years. They're expected to discuss Japan's newly passed security legislation, as well as bilateral security issues and their defence policies. Now, slashing childcare expenses for families hasn't really proven that effective in boosting Korea's chronically low birth rate. So, in addition to those benefits, there's a fresh focus now on creating a better environment for young married couples. Kim Min-ji has the details.
Create a better environment for people to get married and have children. That's what the government plans to do as Korea continues to wrestle with the chronic problem of a low birth rate. Over the next 5 years, the government will take steps to help young people tie the knot, rather than postpone it indefinitely as many do now. The decision is based in part on data showing that the younger a person is when they get married, the more children they will have. In the year 2000, 26 was the average age at which Korean women first got married. But by 2013, it had risen to 30. The proportion of single people aged 25 to 39 has also risen, nearly doubling in 10 years. None of this is good news for Korea, as women who married before they were 25 had 2 children on average, while those who tied the knot after 35 had just 1.
We believe that reducing the burden when it comes to finding housing or getting a good education or a stable job will prevent young couples from postponing marriage.
To accomplish that, the government is hoping to increase the number of jobs for young people. By 2017, it plans to create 40,000 new positions in the public sector, while supporting job creation efforts initiated in the private sector. Housing is another problem for young married couples who are just getting started. To help them, the government will expand the housing loans for newly married couples, as well as ease of qualifications for housing support. In addition, any expenses related to pregnancy or childbirth will be included under the country's national medical insurance plan by 2017, and new childcare policies will be implemented to prevent working mothers from leaving the workforce. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Shifting gears now to the Philippines, where Typhoon Koppu made landfall early on Sunday local time, killing at least 4 people and leaving several others missing. According to the local disaster agency, the 24th typhoon of the year ripped through the northern part of the country, packing winds of close to 200 kilometers an hour. It also dumped heavy rain, triggering floods and landslides and forcing more than 23,000 people to evacuate. Koppu has since weakened, but with the typhoon moving so slowly, heavy rain is likely to fall in the same areas for several days. Weather authorities say the typhoon will remain over the main northern island of Luzon due to a high-pressure system in the north. Now, staying with international news, and the Iran nuclear deal is one step closer to reality. The United States and the European Union have both taken formal legal steps that will lift sanctions once Tehran meets the conditions laid out in the agreement. Iran must now show the International Atomic Energy Agency that it has restricted its nuclear program as promised, a process likely to take at least 2 months. In Washington, US President Barack Obama called the step an important milestone towards preventing Iran from obtaining a nuclear bomb. The procedures began 90 days after the UN Security Council endorsed the accord struck between 6 world powers and Tehran. Under the terms of this deal, Iran has to curb its nuclear program in return for relief from crippling economic sanctions. Online retail giant Amazon is taking more than 1,100 people to court for posting fake reviews on its website. The company says its reputation is being tarnished by false, misleading and inauthentic reviews. Amazon is suing people who have been offering on Fiverr.com, a website that lets people do tasks for as little as $5 to write fake 5-star reviews. Now, this is not the first time Amazon has taken action such as this. Earlier this year, the company sued a number of websites for selling similar fake review services. Now, Korea has been putting on a wide range of cultural performances in Venezuela to mark half a century of diplomatic ties between the two countries. For a taste of what's been going on, our Hwang Jie reports from Caracas.
Screaming and cheering fills the hall at a national theater in Venezuela. What's generating such fervent support? Korean artists who are here for a very special show.
We are very grateful to be able to perform here. We couldn't have done it without such a supportive audience.
The show is part of a 2-day event hosted by Korea's Culture Ministry and the Korean Embassy in Venezuela, and organized by Arirang TV, celebrating the 50 years of relations between Korea and Venezuela.
I expect this kind of event to support the activities of Korean companies in Venezuela that are already actively operating here. 80% of Korea's construction contracts from South American countries come from Venezuela.
The over 2,000 seats were jam-packed with people who wanted to participate in this occasion.
We like the Korean culture, and this is the 50th Korean Venezuela anniversary, and we're happy.
Korean culture is it's expanding all over the world, and it's right now in here in Venezuela, it's very popular with Hallyu and Korean dramas and everything. It's very nice right now.
Some K-pop fans even staged their own performances.
I really love pop music, but in Korea it's really artistic because it's about dancing, about the way you look, about everything.
During the 2-day event, Korea is also seeking to boost its image in Venezuela and further promote the cultural wave that has sprung up around K-pop. Hwang Jie, Arirang News, Caracas.
Now, in an ultra-fast-paced society like Korea, keeping traditions alive isn't the easiest task, but a bunch of craftsmen are fighting against the tide as they prepare for this year's International Craftworks exhibition. That is going to be held in Korea's central city of Cheongju. Son-ho Lee reports.
These craftsmen inspect feathers they will use to create a traditional bow and arrow. Such weapons were once used for hunting and wars. Old-fashioned books and folding screens made in the traditional Korean way are a rare sight these days.
It was hard for me to realize how they were made just through books, but seeing all this live gave me more insight and also how people lived during those times.
Other items include this kayagum, or Korean harp. The craftsman has to make sure all the notes ring properly. Another puts finishing touches on a wooden spoon and prepares to display it.
Lacquering it a few times gives the wood a nice scent, protects it from insects and humidity, and also preserves it for many, many years.
Making old-fashioned paper from tree bark requires a painstakingly long process. A ceramics artist carves out pieces of porcelain the old Joseon dynasty way. Traditional works such as these are becoming harder to come by as more and more people seek out modern handiworks.
Young people don't want to learn these skills, so I don't think the tradition will carry on.
With this year's International Craft Biennale exhibition approaching in Cheongju, these craftsmen are determined to keep their traditions alive. Seoul Lee, Arirang News.
Well, those are stories we're following on this Monday morning here in Seoul. Thank you as always for watching, and we'll be back throughout the day with more newscasts. Goodbye.